So, in the dead of night, while the king was heavily medicated and resting, and the palace corridors were completely abandoned by senior staff, a quiet, ruthless operation was put into motion to rewrite royal history and strip the Princess of Wales of her ultimate birthright. It was a calculated move, executed entirely in the shadows, intended to permanently lock away one of the most iconic, priceless, and historically significant pieces of the entire royal collection. We are talking about the legendary Grand Duchess Vladimir Tiara, and Queen Camilla almost got away with it. She almost managed to bury this magnificent crown in her own highly restricted private vault, completely out of reach, ensuring that Princess Catherine would never, ever have the chance to wear it. But what Camilla didn't know, what no one in her inner circle of ambitious aides anticipated, was that the Princess of Wales had a secret weapon lying in wait. A masterstroke so perfectly timed that it didn't just stop a multi-million-pound theft. It utterly humiliated the Queen Consort in front of the entire inner court. And when Catherine finally stepped out under the flashing global lights, wearing the exact dripping emeralds Camilla had tried to steal, it wasn't just a stunning fashion statement. It was an absolute, undeniable declaration of war. To really understand the sheer magnitude of this power struggle, we have to look backwards. This isn't just a petty squabble over pretty jewelry. This is a bloodline war. We have to go back to 1947, deep into the forgotten royal archives, specifically surrounding King George VI's private purchases and the incredibly strict, secret edicts laid down about what belongs to the state and what belongs exclusively to the bloodline. You see, the Vladimir Tiara isn't just gold and diamonds. When those staggering, heavy Cambridge emeralds are suspended from its interlocking diamond circles, the crown becomes a symbol of absolute matriarchal dominance. It radiates pure, unadulterated power. Historically, whoever controls the emeralds controls the visual narrative of the royal court. King George VI knew this. Queen Mary knew this. And Queen Elizabeth II certainly knew this better than anyone. For decades, the true ownership structure of these specific jewels was buried in the darkest vaults of the royal archives, protected by layers of bureaucratic red tape that very few had the security clearance to even look at, let alone bypass. Camilla's camp knew exactly what they were doing. The scheme was brilliantly, chillingly sinister. Knowing that the king's health and attention have been severely divided recently, the Queen Consort's strategists began quietly consolidating power, moving highly significant, priceless assets from the sovereign's general trust into semi-private holdings under Camilla's direct, exclusive control. The goal was incredibly simple but devastating. Outmaneuver the younger generation. Starve the Princess of Wales of the visual symbols of her future queenship. Camilla's faction wanted to ensure that when the cameras flashed at the next major state banquet, Catherine would be entirely sidelined, forced to wear lesser, secondary pieces, while Camilla draped herself in the ultimate, untouchable symbols of majesty. The Vladimir Tiara was the ultimate grand prize. The plan was to transfer it out of the central royal collection and into a highly restricted private vault at Clarence House, completely under the guise of safe preservation. A vault where Camilla, and Camilla alone, held the digital cipher and the physical keys. If the tiara went in there, it would never come out for Catherine. It was an act of pure, calculated jealousy. A scheme born out of the desperate need to assert total dominance over a Princess of Wales who effortlessly commands the global stage without even trying. But they severely underestimated the protective wall standing around Catherine. Princess Anne, fiercely loyal to her late mother's true wishes, and Prince William, who has zero tolerance for these relentless palace machinations, formed an impenetrable faction. They are the ultimate protectors of the legacy now. They saw the requisition orders slipping through the system. They tracked the quiet movement of the royal jewelers, and they felt an absolute burning fury at what was unfolding right under their noses. William is not his father. He does not turn a blind eye eye to the quiet power grabs and the manipulative whispers that happen behind closed oak doors. When he realized that his wife was being intentionally targeted and humiliated, that her rightful inheritance as the future queen was being systematically hijacked by his stepmother, the response was immediate, and it was ruthless. Camilla thought she had won. The requisition paperwork for the Vladimir Tiara was supposedly finalized by her loyalists. The custom velvet boxes were being prepped for the midnight move. Her camp was already celebrating the quiet victory, convinced she had successfully outmaneuvered the Wales faction. Or so she thought. Because just as the transfer was about to be physically executed, just as the handlers were preparing to move the emeralds out of the master vault, a devastating roadblock was thrown directly into her path. It wasn't just a verbal objection from a disgruntled courtier. It was a physical, undeniable, legally binding barricade that sent absolute shockwaves through Camilla's entire team. The vault doors were abruptly slammed shut. The jewelers were ordered by royal security to stand down immediately, and the Queen Consort was left standing in the cold, realizing that her grand, secretive scheme had just been blown to absolute pieces. Catherine didn't just block the theft, she completely reversed the board. The sheer panic in Camilla's camp when they realized they had been legally and completely outplayed must have been absolutely deafening. They had spent months carefully plotting this out, waiting patiently for the perfect moment of distraction to secure the emeralds. And in one single, devastating countermove, the Princess of Wales not only reclaimed the Vladimir Tiara, but she completely exposed the Queen Consort's underlying insecurity to the highest levels of the royal household. It was a humiliation on a staggering scale, and it proved once and for all that Catherine is no longer the quiet, compliant princess willing to take a backseat to palace bullies. She is a queen in waiting, and she knows exactly how to play the game, better than anyone else in the firm. You have to wonder how Catherine actually pulled off such a flawless, devastating checkmate. How does a Princess of Wales completely override the active Queen Consort on matters of the royal collection? The answer is buried in something so deeply classified that even the king's closest advisors were completely kept in the dark. But before we get to the actual proof that brought Camilla's entire operation crashing down, you need to know that there's a lot more to this unfolding story. So make sure you're subscribed to Crown Gaze so you don't miss the next update, because what comes next completely rewrites modern royal history. It wasn't just luck that saved the Vladimir Tiara. It was highly classified, ironclad paperwork. According to recently leaked memos and explosive revelations buried deep within the royal solicitor's private notes, Catherine's victory was secured by a document so powerful it transcends the current reign. We are talking about restricted documents filed under charter seals that prove the existence of a sealed covenant. This wasn't a standard will or a simple list of bequests. This was a direct, legally binding transfer of stewardship executed by Queen Elizabeth II in her absolute final days at Balmoral. The late queen knew exactly what was coming. She possessed a terrifyingly sharp understanding of human nature, and she had spent decades quietly watching Camilla's relentlessly calculated ascent. Elizabeth remembered the brutal power games of the 1990s. She remembered how the system isolated Princess Diana, stripping away her protections, her titles, and her access to the crown's visual armor. The late queen was absolutely determined that history would not repeat itself. She would not allow her beloved granddaughter-in-law to be subjected to the same psychological warfare and systematic stripping of status. While the world thought the aging monarch was simply resting, she was actually working tirelessly with her most trusted, discreet legal minds. Secret handwritten notes from the late Queen Elizabeth have now surfaced, proving that she intentionally and surgically removed the crown's greatest emeralds from the general royal collection pool. She bypassed the Queen Consort entirely. She looked right past Camilla and handed the keys directly to Catherine. The emotional stakes here are absolutely absolutely astronomical. This is not just about who gets to wear a shiny hat to a diplomatic reception. This is about a bloodline endorsement from the longest reigning monarch in British history. Catherine and her staunch ally Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, have always represented unwavering loyalty to the crown. They put duty first. They kept their heads down. They never leaked, they never complained, and they never played the vicious media games that Camilla used to claw her way to the throne. Elizabeth recognized that loyalty. The late Queen saw Catherine as the true, uncorrupted future of the monarchy. By legally binding the Vladimir Tiara to the Princess of Wales, Elizabeth was reaching out from beyond the grave to protect her. She was ensuring that whenever Catherine stepped into a room, the sheer weight of history and the undeniable blessing of the late Queen would be radiating from her very presence. Camilla has spent her entire royal life trying to outrun the ghost of Princess Diana, only to find herself completely blocked by the phantom hand of Queen Elizabeth. So how exactly did the late Queen make this trap completely inescapable? She didn't just ask nicely, she weaponized the law. She invoked a devastatingly obscure legal mechanism rooted in the ancient royal prerogative. By establishing an airtight covenant trust, she initiated what constitutional experts refer to as an anticipatory obstruction. It is a brilliant, ruthless piece of legal engineering. What this means in plain English is that the specific jewels named in the covenant were permanently locked into a trust that skips a generation. The reigning monarch's consort has absolutely zero legal standing, zero authority, and zero right to even request access to the vault where these items are held. The trust can only be activated by the Princess of Wales, and its terms cannot be amended, revoked, or overridden by the current king without triggering a massive constitutional crisis and a public parliamentary review. Camilla's camp walked right into a tripwire they didn't even know existed. When her aides submitted the standard requisition orders to move the Vladimir Tiara to her private Clarence House vault, they assumed it would be rubber stamped. Instead, they triggered a silent alarm in the Lord Chamberlain's office. The royal solicitors were immediately summoned, and in a closed-door meeting that must have been thick with absolute shock and utter humiliation, Camilla's team was presented with the sealed covenant. They were forced to look at the late Queen's unmistakable signature. They were explicitly told in no uncertain terms that their requisition was illegal, invalid, and permanently denied. The anticipatory obstruction held firm. Camilla's entire scheme was legally dismantled in a matter of minutes, leaving her with absolutely no recourse, no appeal, and no way to hide her blatant power grab from the senior royals who were watching the entire disaster unfold. The realization that Queen Elizabeth had secretly firewalled the crown's most precious assets away from her must have been a bitter, jagged pill for Camilla to swallow. For years, the Queen Consort's PR machine has worked overtime to project an image of a united, harmonious, and modernized royal family. They have desperately tried to sell the narrative that the transition of power was smooth, that the late Queen fully embraced Camilla, and that there are no lingering resentments behind palace walls. But this leaked legal document shatters that carefully constructed illusion into a million pieces. It exposes the raw, ugly truth of the palace power dynamics. The late monarch did not trust Camilla with the legacy. She knew that the moment she was gone, a vicious scramble for dominance would begin, and she armed Catherine with the ultimate shield. The silence that fell over the Queen Consort's inner circle that day was the silence of absolute defeat. They had tried to break the future queen, to steal her shine and push her into the shadows, and instead, they gave Catherine the perfect opportunity to prove exactly how untouchable she truly is. And then came the moment moment that shattered the palace facade entirely, the ultimate power move. You have to picture the scene at the grand diplomatic reception. The tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The world's press was waiting. The flashing lights were ready. Camilla had already arrived, draped in diamonds, desperately trying to command the room and project an image of total control. And then the heavy double doors of the state dining room swung open. The room went dead silent, because standing there, radiating an aura of absolute, unyielding authority, was the Princess of Wales. And resting perfectly upon her head, gleaming under the immense crystal chandeliers, was the exact crown Queen Camilla had just tried to steal. The Grand Duchess Vladimir Tiara. The heavy, teardrop Cambridge emeralds were swinging gently with her every step. It was a vision of total triumph. Every single flash of the cameras captured a victory that went so much deeper than fashion. Catherine wasn't just wearing a priceless antique. She was wearing a legally binding declaration of war. She was wearing the late Queen's ultimate armor. Imagine the psychological devastation echoing through Camilla's mind in that precise second. The Queen Consort had to stand there, frozen, forcing a tight, incredibly brittle smile for the international press, while forced to stare directly at the prize she had been legally blocked from touching. The emeralds were blinding. They were mocking her. Everyone in the inner circle, every senior courtier, and every royal aide who knew about the failed midnight requisition was watching. They saw Camilla's ultimate humiliation broadcast in high definition. The subtle, knowing glance Prince William gave to his wife as they descended the grand staircase said absolutely everything. It was a silent, devastating message to the Queen Consort's camp. It said, "We see you, we caught you, and we will absolutely crush you if you ever try this again." Catherine's carriage was perfect. Her smile was warm, but her eyes held a chilling, diamond-hard resolve. This was the moment the Princess of Wales stopped being the dutiful, quiet student of the firm and officially stepped into the role of the apex predator of the royal court. The Vladimir Tiara itself carries a heavy, bloody history of survival. It was smuggled out of Russia during the violent revolution, hidden away from those who sought to destroy the imperial bloodline. How fitting that decades later, this exact same crown had to be essentially smuggled out of the reach of a modern palace usurper. Catherine's decision to wear it wasn't just a slap in the face to Camilla. It was a message to the entire world that the true royal bloodline will not be erased, sidelined, or locked in a vault to satisfy the ego of a second wife. The optics were utterly devastating for the king's camp. Here was the Princess of Wales, effortlessly channeling the unmatched majesty of Queen Elizabeth II, while the actual Queen Consort looked incredibly small, completely outshined, and utterly defeated. But the fallout from this brilliant checkmate goes so much further than one night of extreme humiliation. A deep, consuming paranoia has now completely infected the Queen Consort's inner circle. If Queen Elizabeth II secretly orchestrated an anticipatory obstruction to protect the Vladimir Tiara, what else did she lock away? The entire landscape of the royal vaults is now a terrifying minefield for Camilla. Every time her aides try to quietly move an asset, every time they try to requisition a historic necklace, a brooch, or a painting, they are completely paralyzed by the fear of tripping another hidden wire. How many other sealed covenants are sitting in the dark, waiting to detonate? Did the late queen lock away the Cullinan diamonds? Did she legally sever the greatest sapphires from the sovereign's trust? Elizabeth's ghost is essentially haunting the Clarence House camp, dictating the rules of the game from beyond the grave. Camilla is sitting on the throne, but she is being systematically starved of the true, historic power pieces she desperately craves to legitimize her controversial reign. This entire spectacle is the ultimate revenge for Princess Diana. Diana was left entirely exposed to the wolves. She was stripped of her title, stripped of her royal protections, and forced to hand back the visual symbols of her royal status. She was systematically broken by the exact same machine that Camilla used to elevate herself. But Catherine is completely immune. immune, because Catherine learned from Diana's tragedy, and she formed an impenetrable alliance with the one person Camilla could never defeat. The late monarch made absolutely sure that the mother of the future king would be armed to the teeth with the most powerful legal and historical protections the British monarchy has ever seen. Camilla spent decades playing the long game, enduring the public hatred, manipulating the press, and waiting patiently to secure the ultimate crown. But she forgot that Elizabeth had been playing the game for 70 years, and in the end, the late queen executed a masterstroke that permanently secured Catherine's supremacy, leaving the current Queen Consort boxed into a corner of her own making. The battle lines within Buckingham Palace are no longer just drawn in pencil. They are carved in stone. We are looking at two entirely separate, warring courts operating under one roof. On one side, you have a desperately scrambling faction trying to consolidate whatever power they can while the king's reign remains vulnerable. On the other side, you have the Wales faction, heavily fortified, legally untouchable, and waiting with absolute patience for their inevitable turn. The Vladimir Tiara was merely the first strike. It was a warning shot fired directly across Camilla's bow. And as Catherine wore those staggering emeralds, standing tall and utterly unbothered, she proved that she is holding all the right cards. If you are as entirely captivated by these explosive, hidden royal power struggles as we are, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like on this video and let us know down in the comments who you think is really running the show behind palace doors. We are investigating every single leak, every hidden document, and every quiet movement within the firm, and you will not want to miss what we uncover next. Because make no mistake, this royal war is far from over. In fact, it is only just beginning. The king is resting, the aides are panicking, and the vault doors are heavily guarded. The ground is shifting. History is being rewritten. The future of the crown hangs by a thread.